Hello. It's a lot of people. So I'm Jennifer. I got into tech a long time ago because my dad liberated a very old Mac from his work and put it in my bedroom in the 90s. And I discovered I could make cool stuff and put it on the internet and share it with people and be cool online in a way that I really, really wasn't in real life. You may argue that that's not really improved, but whatever. I went to uni and bummed around for a little while, and I ended up, tried a number of different things, and I ended up temping in an office doing data entry, really tedious data entry. And because, you know, the kind of person I am, I learned some VB, and I automated a lot of it. Obviously, I didn't tell anybody about this because I was on a fixed-term contract, and I was being paid by the hour. But that was basically the start of my software development career. Now, I am... many years later, I'm a newly minted team lead. I've been back and forth, but I'm currently a team lead in my business, in my small company. And because we're only small, the title that team lead there, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. I've got a lot of responsibilities. Some of you will understand. I'm responsible not only for the delivery of my team, but I do architecture. We help plan features, line management, mentoring. I'm running research projects. And I still take tickets and write code on a daily basis, so it's busy. Because we're very small, we don't have a person, and we definitely don't have a team devoted to stuff like DevX or productivity. So as I'm kind of the interface person between the devs and the stakeholders, the delivery, performance, and reporting on that stuff is all now part of my job. But because I've got a lot of stuff going on, I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to any one part of the job. So I try really, really hard to simplify my life as much as possible. So one thing I've been working on recently is trying to design some smart delivery metrics that will allow me to track my team's sort of progress and performance to help them improve, whilst also using the same data so I can report to my stakeholders. So work smarter, not harder, you know. It'd be really easy for me to just build like a little Dora dashboard with some graphs that go up and show that to people at meetings. But to me, that's kind of meaningless. Dora's great and whatever, but the graphs themselves don't mean a whole lot by themselves on their own. So I've gone back to basics, and I'm starting to try and think about what it is that my two audiences, my developers and my stakeholders, what they're actually interested in, what they're interested in knowing. And now in my case, it's a small company. Not many people, not many executives, whatever. And we can boil that down to just two basic points. What are we building, and how are we building it? The stakeholders tend to be more interested in the what, and the teams, the developers tend to be more interested in the how. But realistically, they're both important questions for both sides of both of the audiences, I guess. So my question is, what can I measure to answer these questions? And more importantly, how can I automate it? So I have to do less. So starting with the first one, the what are we building? You could kind of argue that that's not really my problem because it's kind of up to the product team, right? And to an extent that is true. Like the product set the objectives, they determine the direction, they work out what features we're going to build. We have an input into that, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to build like the right thing. We just need to make sure we're doing that. So as a standard thing, we can measure how much work we do in a sprint, like the sprint velocity. I personally don't like story points. We just count numbers of tickets. It's still estimating, just no numbers. We can talk about that later if you really want to. So we just count the number of tickets that we do. At the moment, my team, this is real data that we've taken off of our metrics dashboard thing. So we're completing about 30 tickets a sprint at the moment, and that's it's pretty stable at the moment. So we use that when we're planning to figure out how much work we can do. But these 30 tickets could be anything, you know. The number doesn't tell you anything about whether they're the right 30 tickets. They could all be just, you know, nonsense. So in order to keep us on track and to try and keep us doing the right work, every sprint we try, obviously, to have a clear, concise sprint goal. But we also track another metric that I like to call the goal ratio. So we know how much work we can do in a sprint, and we know the sprint goal. And so when we're in planning, we work out what proportion of that work is going to be goal-oriented and what's going to be something else. So imagine we've got a super time-sensitive goal going on. We may do 100% of the tickets in that sprint are goal-related. Realistically, that we would never do that because there's always something that comes up to try and like derail whatever plans you have. So we go maybe 75%. We track this ratio over time as well as the sprint completion rate. So we've got the goal ratio, the sprint completion, and the velocity. Now, this does add extra work to our planning sessions, just a little bit. But the bonus is that it gives us a ton of really good information for me to report back to the stakeholders in our delivery meetings. We only make one product in our company. So everybody in the business is really, really involved in the development, and they really want the development to be like good. Everyone's very invested. So I can present to them, this is obviously not real data, but I can present to them the product goal, how our sprint goals align to that product goal, and how we've been progressing through those goals towards what it is that we're supposed to be building. And that goes down very well. I also tend to show them stuff like the sprint velocity, because like realistically, my CEO, he doesn't care how many tickets we do. He doesn't care if we do 1 or 1,000. The numbers are meaningless to him. But what he cares about is that we're working like consistently and predictably. Because then when we're planning stuff, he will trust our estimates because he's got confidence in the numbers that we're giving him. The second question that I want to answer for my teams and stakeholders is how we're working. Specifically in my team, we're very focused at the moment on efficiency because we've got a big code base and not many people. So we need to not be wasting time on pointless stuff, which is something I'm guilty of a lot of the time. Other people might be more interested in like security or quality or whatever, but for us at the moment, it's efficiency. And there's loads and loads of tools, some of which are in the lobby, that can help me measure stuff like this kind of stuff like ticket lifecycle, door metrics, average deploys per engineer, or you could do stuff like number of bugs per release or whatever. So it sounds like the how is much, much easier an easier question to answer than the what. But just because these things are easy to measure doesn't necessarily mean that they are useful. You need to consider like what these numbers actually mean, and if you're going to do anything about them, and if you do, is it something that's actually going to make a difference? Like, for example, I'm running out of time. Measuring the life cycle of tickets might show that you spend a massive proportion of time waiting for a code review. Is that good or bad or what? I mean, the number means nothing. We have to assign some meaning to that ourselves. Like, it might be worth changing just because I find waiting annoying, so it might be worth doing something about the review process. But the better way of thinking of it is the wider impact of what that's doing to the rest of your development, like your delivery lifecycle. So, like, longer in review means longer ticket lifecycle. It means longer till you deploy. It means longer feedback cycles. It probably means that there's more context switching for anybody involved in those tickets, which has its own issues. So reducing the time in review might seem like a big success because like that graph's going down, everyone's happy, like it looks like we've done a good job. But the real question is, what has that done? Like, has it affected the team's velocity? Has it affected their deployment frequency? And what does that mean for the customer in the end? Or on the other side, what does it mean for the team? Like, does enforcing a speedy review process, does it stress people out? It does me. Finding a way to measure the wider outcome of these changes that you're making, more than just like tracking the raw output of like the raw numbers, makes everything much more meaningful. Now, I'm lucky because my leadership team, they're not really that involved in like our day-to-day processes, and they basically let us do what we think is best. Doesn't mean they're not interested though. So I show them stuff like this when we do little experiments with our process. So with the review time, if we can say to them, if I go into a delivery meeting and can say, I've made some changes to the review process, so it means things, we can deploy more frequently and customers get value quicker. That's something they're very interested in. They like that kind of stuff. So the big context is what we're trying to sell, not the 6 hours down to 15 minutes or whatever the numbers were. Now, I've worked in some dysfunctional places, one in particular before, which we can talk about in the pub, where if I went to a delivery meeting and dared to tell my C-suite that we'd taken time out, we dared to take time out of the sprint to mess with processes, that would have not gone down well at all. But thankfully, where I work now, and hopefully it's true for everybody here, is that's my current place is not like that at all. They're very involved in this stuff. They really care. They trust us to do what's best for the product. A part of building and maintaining that trust is the transparency in how we're working. It shows that we're engaged, it shows that we care, and it shows that we care about improving as a team. So in conclusion, I'm only just over time. It was a very short talk, probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but I think it's an important conversation, an important thing to be thinking about, because there's been a lot of stuff online, and some of it I think is getting it's not very sensible, it can be quite damaging, so it's worth thinking about if you're measuring stuff, working out what it is that you are measuring and why. So, I've got more slides than I realised. In my position, I've really tried to focus on simple but meaningful, team-based, not individual, measurements that make my life easier, basically, but also help to build a stable and engaged team, whilst also showing the stakeholders that what's good for the team is also good for the business. And the only way we can do that effectively is through communication, honesty, and transparency in both directions. So, thank you. Here's some previous metrics.